This is section 2 of the linear perspective lesson. So again, you're going to need paper, a pencil, an eraser, and a straight edge of some kind. Now I've already put my horizon line across my paper and my vanishing point in the middle because we are still dealing with 1-point perspective, which is what we use when the flat side of something is facing us. Today we're going to work on block letters because they're slightly more complex than just boxes, but they're still simple enough that you shouldn't have too much trouble with them. I'm going to start with a letter that has very simple shapes to it, and this is a block letter, capital E. And I'm going to create this using my basic shapes. Basic shapes in this case are rectangles. I know a lot of students have trouble with block letters. They are all made out of basic shapes. So if you just draw your basic shapes, the letter will pretty much take care of itself. The letter E is a series of 4 rectangles. So I've got a base rectangle. To make my life easier down the road, I'm going to make sure that a lot of the parts of my rectangles on my letter E are going to line up. So I'm kind of thinking as I go and making sure that the ends of these stems on the E are the same length. Just make life a little bit easier. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4 rectangles. And that makes a block letter E. Now the reason I'm having you do this is because you need to be able to handle things other than just simple rectangles. You need to be able to handle more complex forms because eventually you're going to want to be drawing other things than just boxes in perspective. That gets really boring after a while. Make sure you're drawing lightly. I'm drawing a little bit darker so you guys can see it, so I can't completely erase, as you might notice, but you're going to want to make sure you draw lightly. Now the rules stay the same. This is just like doing a series of boxes. So we draw the flat side of the shape that's facing us, and then we are going to take the corners to our vanishing point, all of the corners, unless they pass through our original shape. So this is a corner also, but it would pass through the E, so I'm not going to draw it. This corner would also pass through the E, but I see a little bit of it first. So I'm just going to go till I hit the edge, and then I stop. I'm going to check every single corner to see if I can see it going to this vanishing point. And again, make sure you are drawing lightly. I'm drawing a little bit darker than I would recommend you draw. So there we go. This one, I'm going to stop when I hit the edge of my shape. And this one I'm not going to draw at all because it would pass through it. Now I need to cut off this E. It's going on forever and ever. To cut it off, I'm going to want to kind of use my brain a little bit. All of these edges match up because I drew it that way. It's going to make my life easier. I'm going to slide it over. I'm going to cut it off. And because they all match up, I can cut them all off at the same time. To find my next edge, I put my ruler, slide it down to the corner that I made, and I cut it off. Now, I would come until I hit this corner right here, but see how it's inside of my E right there? I'm not going to be able to see it, so I don't have to worry about it. And I just stop right there on that one. Same thing, put my ruler on the edge, slide it down till I hit that corner, cut it off. I can see it on this. I know it's kind of hard to see it. I'm going to try and move this thing. Zoom in a little bit. Focus. There we go. Now I'm just seeing a little bit right here, but that's a very important line. I'm going to want to make sure that I cut off the other edge as well. These are very close together. I've almost got a situation where I've got a tangent, but they're just far enough apart that I think I'll be okay. Put my ruler on this edge, set it down, cut it off. And there's my block letter E. It's not terribly complicated. I would suggest that you practice a few different letters with straight lines in class. We're going to be practicing a couple different ones so that you can kind of get more comfortable with it. And of course, as always, you email me with any questions. Sometimes we want to do letters that don't have straight lines. So the one I'm going to talk about next is the one that gives students the most trouble. I figure might as well get it out of the way since it's the one that most people are going to dislike. And this is the letter S. The letter S is not as hard as people make it. So here's how I would recommend you do it, and please do it along with me. Rewind and pause if you need to. I'm going to draw a circle. Now remember, I've taught you guys how to draw circles. Use your whole arm. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just a light gestural circle. I'm going to draw another one on top of this. They can be the same size, or the top one can be just a little smaller. I'm going to turn these into kind of donuts. So I'm going to put a circle inside of this one. I'm going to do the same thing to this one, trying to keep the same width here. So I think somewhere around there would make it the same width. Okay, now right now it looks like the number 8. I'm going to cut my donut. On the top, I'm going to cut it on the right-hand side. On the bottom, I'm going to cut it on the left. And then I'm going to follow the outside curve of the top donut, the inside curve of the bottom donut. I'm going to follow the inside curve of the top donut to the outside curve of the bottom donut. Notice I'm transitioning smoothly from one curve to the next. Then all I have to do is erase the bits that I don't want. This is the easiest way to draw a block letter S, which of students seem to have trouble with. So there we go. Easy enough. I can come in and darken the lines that I know I need to keep. Just so I can see them a little more clearly and so I can erase a little bit better. Now curves work roughly the same way in perspective as straight lines do. There is a little adjustment you have to make, but it's really not difficult. The key is trust your vanishing point. Don't guess. You never have to guess in perspective, and that's the nice thing about it. There is no guessing. It's either right or it's wrong, and there are very simple rules to follow. With straight edges and corners, you take the corner to the vanishing point. Well, the letter S has a couple of corners we can do that with. So let's start with those. I'm going to take my corners to the vanishing point, just like I would have with anything else. So that one's going to go to the vanishing point. This one would cross through my S, so I'm not going to draw it. This one, I'll do it until I hit my S, and then I'll stop. This one, do the same thing until I stop. But this isn't giving us all of the points going to the vanishing point that we need. We still need a few more. Well, curves really aren't that bad. So here's what you do. You're going to put your straight edge on your vanishing point. You're going to rotate it until you hit the edge of a curve that has a blank space behind it. See how there's a curve here? I'm hitting the edge, and then there's a blank space behind it. That's where I'm going to draw my line. Just like that. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing over here. Draw a line where that curve hits. So here I'm hitting the edge of a curve, and there's a blank space behind it. If there's not a blank space behind it, don't draw it. And that goes like that. And now I'm ready to cut it off. I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to do my straight edge first because straight edges are easy. Cut this off. Now to cut off a curve, to cut off a straight, these two have to be parallel. To cut off a curve, the curve and the curve have to be parallel. So I'm going to mirror this curve. I'm going to pretend I'm tracing it until I hit the edge. Also, use what you know. This is above my horizon line, so I should be seeing the underneath side of it. I am, so it makes sense. I'm going to do the same thing here, using about the same width. I'm going to just make a mirror image of this curve. So I'm just going to follow it, keeping it about the same distance apart until I hit the edge. Now, this makes sense because this is above me. I should not be seeing the top of this part of it, and I'm not. I'm seeing the left side, but I'm not seeing the top. I should see the bottom right here, so I'm going to do the same thing. Make this edge and this edge parallel. I'm just going to mirror it all the way around until I hit the edge. You want to make sure that stays curved. Just like that. Erase the lines I don't need. And there's a block letter S going to my vanishing point. Okay, let's try one more. I'll try one that has a straight and a curve. So let's try a block letter R. It's kind of close to my horizon line, but probably shorten it down just a little bit. Use what you know about basic shapes. Rectangles, circles, triangles, they're going to be your friends in this one. This part of the R is circular. I think a little bit closer, right about there. And then I'm going to want a piece cut out. It's going to go something like this. Notice I drew plenty of little lines. I'm gesturing. And the bottom part of the R is going to be kind of triangular. The easiest way to get the triangular part is to figure out where I want the bottom of it. I don't want it to come out too much farther, so right about here. And then I'm going to connect it here. I don't want to keep it about the same width as my rectangle, so this is just a tilted rectangle. And there's a block letter R. I like to take this to my vanishing point, tidy up my curve a little bit. To take this to my vanishing point, I'm going to take my corners first because corners are predictable and easy. My next corner. Sounds a little bit off. Let's try that again. There we go. Precision matters. Here's a corner down here. Stop pulling at my shape. Here's a corner right here. There's a corner here. And of course, I'm going to have to do something about that curve. So I put my ruler on my vanishing point, rotate it out until I hit the very edge of that curve, where I've got nothing behind it, and that's where I cut it. There are my lines going to my vanishing point. Now I need to cut it off. I'm going to slide this up. I'm going to cut it off here. I'm just going to make a little mark right there that that's the width I'm going for, and then I have to echo this curve. And that part right there would be parallel to that. Normally I'd use a ruler. Slide it over. Looks like I'm not going to see a whole lot of the inside of this. I might see just a little bit of the curve right there, echoing that, but not very much at all. To cut off this part, it's going to go like that. If I came straight down from there, oh, kind of got a tangent, that's okay. It would be actually cut off right there. So there we go. Those are base block letters in 1-point perspective. For your assignment, you are going to use what you learned to do block letters. Your assignment is to do at least 5-letter word, and you can choose whatever word you want. You're going to take block letters to make up that word to the vanishing point, and then you are going to illustrate it, so you're going to fill up your page. I have some finished examples for you. So here is one that is finished. For this, I chose the Italian word volpi, which means foxes. So I did my letters, took to the vanishing point, which is right there, and then filled up the rest of my page by drawing foxes, because that's what mine was based on. Here's another one. This is vermi, which means worms. If you want to shade your letters a little bit, I have taught you to shade. You are allowed to do that. There's another one. This one is the Great Pumpkin. Has to be at least 5 letters. Can do more if you feel like you need to practice. Here are some that are unfinished. So here is the word snails. And you've started sketching in my snails, but I haven't finished. You can cover parts of the letter, but make sure there's enough showing that I can see if you understand perspective correctly. All of these are going to point right there. I can see the insides of them. The snails aren't so much in the way that I can still tell that I understand it. And here's another one that's in progress. This one is squid. So I did my letters, I lightly draw my things, and then go ahead and put them in. Make sure again that your letters are showing enough that I can tell if you understand it or not. This will be to make up the work for this week. So if you have any questions, as always, please email me.